Lily had always been the kind of person who tried to disappear in a crowd. The kind of woman who sat in the back of meetings, took notes no one asked for, and said, sorry, even when she had nothing to apologize for. So when her manager called her at 11 o'clock at night and told her she was being sent on an overnight private jet to Dubai as a last-minute replacement for a senior analyst who had food poisoning, her first reaction was not excitement. It was pure, stomach-dropping panic. She packed her bag in 15 minutes, grabbed every work folder she could find, and showed up at the private terminal, still wearing the same blazer she had worn to the office that morning, slightly wrinkled, with a coffee stain near the pocket she had been hoping no one would notice. The jet was nothing like anything she had ever stepped onto before. It smelled like leather and something expensive she couldn't name, and the seats were wider than her entire couch at home. There were only 4 other people on board. 2 quiet men in dark suits who said nothing. A woman named Lena, who introduced herself as the executive assistant and gave Lily a sharp look that lasted exactly 1 second too long. And then him, Dominic Holly. She recognized him immediately, not because she had ever met him, but because his face had been on the cover of 3 different business magazines in the break room at her office. He did not introduce himself. He simply looked up from his phone when she walked in, nodded once, and went back to reading. Lily sat down as far from him as the cabin would allow, opened her folders, and told herself to focus. The flight was 8 hours. She would work the whole time, stay professional, keep her head down, and under absolutely no circumstances would she do anything embarrassing. She lasted about 4 hours. Somewhere over the Atlantic, after going through every document in her folder twice, answering every email she had, and drinking 2 glasses of water to stay awake, her body simply gave up on her. She had been running on 4 hours of sleep for the past 3 days because of a project deadline, and the quiet hum of the jet engine, combined with the cool cabin air and the soft lighting, was more than she could fight. Her eyes closed just for a second. Just for 1 second, she told herself. She woke up 6 hours later with her cheek pressed against a very firm, very expensive suit jacket, her head resting completely on the shoulder of the most powerful man she had ever been within 10 feet of. For a moment, she did not fully understand what was happening. Her brain came back online slowly, the way it does when you wake up somewhere unfamiliar, and then all at once it hit her, the fabric under her face. The faint sound of someone breathing calmly beside her. The realization that her hand had somehow found its way to rest near his arm, like she was holding on during a storm. She shot upright so fast she nearly knocked her folder off her lap, and the sound that came out of her mouth was not a word. It was more of a strangled gasp that she immediately wished she could take back. Her face went red before she even had time to feel embarrassed. Dominic did not flinch. He did not laugh. He did not even look particularly surprised. He was already awake, looking out the small oval window at the pale orange sky that meant they were close to landing. And he turned toward her with the same calm, unreadable expression he had worn when she boarded. He reached over, picked up the coffee sitting on the small table between their seats, and held it out to her without saying a word. She stared at it for a second, then took it, because her brain had not yet caught up with her hands. It was still warm. "We land in 40 minutes, he said, as if that was the only part of the last 8 hours worth mentioning. Lily opened her mouth to apologize, to explain, to say literally anything that would make the moment feel less impossible, but before she could form a single word, he slid a document across the table toward her, one of the merger files from her folder, and asked her what she thought about the acquisition numbers on page 7. Just like that. No teasing. No mention of what had just happened. She looked down at the page, then back up at him. And for a reason she could not explain, something about the way he was watching her made her feel like the next 40 minutes were going to matter more than she realized. The landing was smooth. The kind of landing that feels almost too quiet. Like the world is holding its breath before dropping you back into reality. Lily gathered her folders, straightened her blazer over the coffee stain she had completely forgotten about until that moment, and told herself that whatever had just happened on that jet was already over and done with, and she was going to walk off that, playing like a normal professional person who had not spent 6 hours sleeping on her billionaire boss's shoulder. She managed it, barely, keeping her eyes forward and her steps steady as they walked through the private terminal, which was nothing like any airport she had ever been through. No lines, no crowds, no one asking to see her boarding pass. Just clean, wide corridors and people who seemed to already know exactly where everyone was supposed to be going. Lena moved quickly ahead of them, speaking quietly into her phone, and the two men in dark suits stayed close behind. Dominic walked beside Lily for exactly 30 seconds before someone approached him with a tablet and pulled his attention away. And just like that, she was on her own again, which was honestly a relief because she had been holding her breath the entire walk off the plane. She found a quieter spot near one of the floor-to-ceiling windows and started going through her folder to make sure everything was in order before whatever meeting or debrief was supposed to happen next. That was when she found it. It was tucked between the merger document from page 7 and her own printed notes from the week before, a plain white envelope. Sealed, no stamp, no return address. Just her name written across the front in handwriting she did not recognize. Not typed. Handwritten. Small, neat letters. The kind someone writes when they are being deliberate, when they want each letter to be clear. She stood there for a second just staring at it, because her mind went to all the logical explanations first. Maybe Lena had slipped something in there. Maybe it was a message from the office. Maybe it was some kind of briefing document she hadn't been told about. She turned it over. Nothing on the back. She opened it slowly, sliding her finger under the seal, and pulled out the single piece of paper inside. It wasn't a document. It wasn't a memo. It was a photograph, printed on regular paper, slightly grainy the way photos look when they have been taken from a distance and then zoomed in too close. And the woman in that photograph stopped Lily cold. She knew that face. She knew the way that woman stood. One hand slightly raised like she was about to wave at someone, the familiar tilt of her head. The coat she used to wear every winter with the 2 missing buttons on the left side, that she always said she would replace and never did. It was her mother. Her mother, who had passed away 22 months ago after a long illness that had taken everything from her slowly and then all at once, the way that kind of thing always does. Her mother, standing outside a building Lily had never seen before, on a street she did not recognize, looking not sick, not fragile, but standing upright and steady in a way she had not been able to for the last 2 years of her life. The photograph had no date printed on it, no location, nothing written on the back. But the coat, Lily knew that coat. She had donated it herself, along with everything else, 8 months after the funeral, when she had finally found the strength to go through the closet, which meant this photo had to have been taken before that. But the building behind her mother was modern, glass-fronted, the kind of building that looks like it was built recently. And there was a small logo near the entrance that Lily could not quite make out, no matter how close she held the page to her face. Her hands were not entirely steady. She looked up from the photograph because she needed a second, needed air, needed something solid to focus on. And that was when she saw him. Dominic was standing about 30 feet away, still in conversation with the man holding the tablet, but his eyes were not on the tablet. They were on her. Not in a threatening way, not in a way she could easily name, but the moment their eyes met, he looked away, just a fraction too quickly, just deliberately enough that it didn't feel accidental. Lily looked back down at the photograph of her mother, then back up at the space where he had been standing. And the cold feeling that moved through her chest had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Lily did not sleep that night. She lay on top of the hotel bed in the room the company had booked for her, still fully dressed. The photograph sitting on the nightstand where she had placed it face up, because every time she put it face down, it felt wrong. Like she was hiding something she wasn't ready to hide. She had looked at it so many times in the past few hours that she had memorized every detail. The angle of her mother's shoulders, the way the light hit the glass building behind her, the small blurry logo near the entrance that her eyes kept trying to read and failing. She had zoomed in on it with her phone camera, taken a picture of the picture, tried to sharpen it, tried every free editing tool she could find at midnight in a hotel room with shaking hands. And the closest she could get was something that looked like 2 letters and a small geometric shape, which told her almost nothing. What she did know was that the building was real, the street was real, and the photograph had come from somewhere, and someone had put it in her folder on purpose. People do not accidentally slip photographs of dead women into strangers' work documents. By 2 in the morning, she had opened her laptop and started searching. She was not a trained investigator, she was an analyst. But analysis was what she knew how to do. She knew how to look at a pile of information and find the thread that connected things. And right now she had one thread, and she was going to pull it. She started with what she could see in the photograph. The architectural style of the building, the type of signage, the width of the pavement, the look of the surrounding area. It took her almost 2 hours of cross-referencing images and satellite views before something finally matched. A stretch of road in upstate New York. A small commercial area about 90 minutes outside the city. Quiet and deliberately unremarkable the way places sometimes are when they do not want to be found easily. She searched the address. A medical research facility came up, not prominently. Not the kind of place that had a flashy website or a press page full of announcements, but registered, listed in public records, operating under a name she did not recognize. And then she dug one layer deeper, the way you have to when you are looking for something that has been made difficult to find on purpose. Going through business registration documents and subsidiary filings and the kind of paperwork that most people never think to look for. And there it was, buried 4 levels deep in a chain of holding companies and legal entities, a name she recognized immediately. It was one of Dominic's companies. Not his main firm, not anything that would show up if you simply searched his name. But it was there, a quiet connection between a man she had fallen asleep on 12 hours ago and a building her dead mother had been, photographs standing outside. She closed the laptop and sat in the dark for a long moment. The next morning, she went looking for Lena. She found her in the hotel lobby, already dressed and moving with that same sharp, purposeful energy, phone in one hand, coffee in the other, looking like someone who had been awake and working since 5. Lily walked straight up to her, which she could tell immediately surprised Lena, because for just a half second the composure cracked before it locked back into place. Lily showed her the photograph without any preamble and asked her simply and directly what she knew about it. Lena looked at the photograph for exactly the kind of pause that means someone is deciding how much to say rather than trying to understand what they are seeing. Then she smiled the tight, practiced smile of someone very good at their job and said she had no idea what Lily was referring to, that the folder had been prepared by the office team, and that if something had been included by mistake, she was happy to help look into it. Every single word was smooth. Every single word felt rehearsed. Lily thanked her and walked away because she had learned enough, not from what Lena said, but from what her face did in that half second before the smile arrived. That night, just after 10, her phone buzzed with a message from a number she did not have saved. She opened it and read it twice, then a third time, standing in the middle of her hotel room with the photograph still on the nightstand and the city lights coming through the curtains behind her. 7 words. That was all it said. Stop looking. He's trying to protect you. She read it one more time, set the phone down carefully on the bed, and then sat beside it and stared at the wall for a very long time. Because those 7 words had not made her feel safer. They had made her feel like she had only just reached the beginning of something she did not yet have a name for. Lily walked into Dominic's office the next morning with the photograph in her hand and her heart going faster than she would have liked, because she had spent the entire night going back and forth between talking herself into this and talking herself out of it. And in the end, the only thing that had pushed her through his door was the simple fact that she could not unknow what she already knew. The office was on the 34th floor, and it had the kind of view that was supposed to make you feel small. All glass and gray sky, and the city spread out below like a map of everything money could reach. And for a second, when she walked in, she almost lost her nerve entirely because he was already there, standing at his desk, jacket off, sleeves rolled to the elbow, reading something that looked important, and the whole room had that quiet, pressurized feeling of a space where serious decisions got made by serious people, and she was neither of those things. She was just a junior analyst with a photograph and a theory and 3 days without proper sleep. She placed the photograph on his desk without saying anything first, slid it across the polished surface toward him, and watched his face. That was the moment she understood something had shifted, because Dominic Hawley, who had barely blinked when she woke up on his shoulder on an international flight, who had watched Lena's rehearsed deflection without a flicker of reaction, who moved through every room like he had already decided how everything in it was going to go. That man looked at the photograph and went completely still. Not the stillness of someone who doesn't recognize what they're seeing. The stillness of someone who has been waiting for a particular moment to arrive and is now standing inside it. He did not speak immediately. He pulled out the chair behind his desk and sat down slowly. And he looked at the photograph for a long time. And Lily stood on the other side of the desk and waited because she had come this far, and she was not going to be the one to fill the silence. When he finally looked up at her, something in his expression was different from every version of him she had seen over the past few days. The careful blankness was gone. And what was underneath, it was not what she had expected. It was not guilt, exactly. It was something closer to exhaustion, the kind that lives in a person for a long time before it shows on their face. He asked her to sit down. She did, and then he told her. He told her that her mother had not died the way the hospital records said she had. That in the last year of her illness, she had enrolled in an experimental treatment trial, voluntarily, with full knowledge of what it involved, at the research facility in upstate New York, the one Lily had found in the public records 2 nights ago. The trial had shown results that nobody expected, results that were significant enough to matter. And somewhere in the process, a third party had gotten involved. A group of people with financial interests in making sure those results never reached the public. Because what the trial was testing threatened something much larger and much more profitable. There had been a cover-up. Records had been altered. Her mother's case, specifically, had been buried because she had been one of the clearest examples of what the treatment could do. And that made her inconvenient to the wrong people. Dominic had found out about it 14 months ago through a contact inside the facility who had come to him because they had nowhere else to go. And he had been quietly building a legal case ever since. Gathering documents, tracing the money, identifying everyone involved, doing it slowly and carefully because moving too fast would give the other side time to destroy what was left of the evidence. And then he said the part that made the air go out of the room completely. He told her that 3 weeks ago, when his team had been going through her mother's financial records as part of the case, They had found a reference to a USB drive, something her mother had kept, something she had described in a personal letter as being held by the one person she trusted most to know what to do with it when the time came. The letter had a name attached to it. Lily's name. She sat very still on the other side of his desk and felt the weight of every single thing she thought. She had known about her mother's last years rearranging itself into a shape she had not been prepared for. And the only thing she could think to say, after everything, was that she had no idea any USB drive existed, and from the look on his face when she said it, she could tell that was the answer that changed everything. Lily drove home that afternoon in a cab that smelled like pine air freshener and old leather. And she sat in the back with her hands folded in her lap and her eyes on the window without really seeing anything because her mind was somewhere else entirely. Turning over everything, Dominic had told her the way you turn over something fragile. Carefully, afraid that if you move too fast, it will break into pieces you cannot put back together. A USB drive. Her mother had left her a USB drive, and somewhere between grief and funeral arrangements and the long, exhausting process of learning how to be a person again, after losing the most important one in your life, she had missed it completely. She had gone through her mother's apartment twice. She had packed boxes and donated bags and sat on the floor of that small bedroom for hours going through drawers and shelves, and the old shoebox under the bed where her mother kept birthday cards and receipts and things that mattered to her in ways that were not always obvious to anyone else. And she had found nothing that looked like a USB drive, nothing that looked like it was waiting for her specifically, nothing that felt like a message left behind on purpose. But here was the thing about her mother that Lily knew better than anyone. She had never been obvious about the things that mattered most to her. She had been quiet and practical and deeply private in the way that people are when they have spent a lifetime protecting the people they love from things they did not want them to carry. So on the ride home, Lily stopped trying to remember where the drive wasn't and started thinking like her mother. Started thinking about what she would have done, where she would have put something she needed to keep safe, but also needed to make findable by exactly one specific person when the time was right. The cab pulled up outside her building, and she was already moving before it fully stopped. Up the stairs and through her front door and straight to the one box she had never fully unpacked. The one sitting on the top shelf of her bedroom closet. The one she had sealed with tape 2 years ago and told herself she would open when she was ready and had never been ready. She pulled it down and sat on the floor with it, the way she had sat on the floor of her mother's apartment. And she opened it slowly, and inside was exactly what she had expected. More cards. More small things. A few photographs. The watch her mother wore every day for 20 years. A folded piece of paper with a recipe written in her handwriting for the soup she used to make every winter. Lily unfolded the recipe carefully because her hands already knew before her brain did. And there it was, taped to the back of the page in a small plastic sleeve. A USB drive no bigger than her thumbnail, with a tiny strip of tape holding it in place, and 2 words written on the sleeve in the same, small, neat handwriting that had been on the envelope in her folder on the jet. For Lily, she sat there on her bedroom floor for a long time holding it. Dominic had told her before she left his office that the choice was entirely hers, that he would not push her, would not pressure her, that what he was building was strong enough to move forward either way, but that what was on that drive, if it was what his contact believed it to be, could change the outcome for a lot of people, not just the 2 of them. He had also told her, quietly, near the end of their conversation, that her mother had known this day might come, that the letter she had written referenced Lily specifically not because she had no other option, but because she believed, in whatever time she had left, that her daughter was the right person for this moment. That was the part Lily kept coming back to, sitting there on the floor. Not the cover-up, not the legal case, not the names of the people involved. All of that felt enormous and distant. and real in the way that things are real before you have fully decided to step into them. What kept coming back was just her mother, standing outside that glass building in her winter coat with the missing buttons, choosing to trust her daughter with something heavy before her daughter even knew there was anything to carry. Lily looked at the drive one more time. Then she got up off the floor, walked to her desk, sat down, and plugged it in. The screen filled with folders, dozens of them, each one labeled with a date. She took a slow breath, moved the cursor to the oldest one, and opened it. And just like that, without any fanfare, without any dramatic music or warning, the real story of her mother's life began.
Thanks for watching my video. Like, subscribe and share.